Hello everyone, this is Aditya and I welcome you to this session on class and object in computer programming in C++. This session aims at introducing you to the concept of class and object. What we are going to see in this session is definition of a class and object, then syntax for defining a class, and then different access specifiers. We'll see all these through an example. So let us begin with class and object. What is class? We have seen structure prior to this concept. So structure was collection of dissimilar data types. Structure defines the data type that the user wants. Now class is a similar concept. Class is also a user defined data type. What it consists of is different data members and the member functions which operate on that data. And what is object? An object is variable of its class. These definitions seems to be difficult to understand without an example. So first we'll see what is the syntax to define a class. Now the syntax for defining a class is first keyword class. You have to mention a keyword class, then a class name. Now the class name can be any name that follows all the rules when you define some variable name. Then curly bracket open, and then there is a term called as access modifier. Now we'll see later what is this access modifier. Under this access modifier, we have to mention the data members. Now for example, if I have student as my class name, the data members can be a roll number of integer type, marks of floating point type. Then there is one more access modifier you can observe here. So this we'll see later what this access modifier is. And then there are member functions. Member function 1, member function 2, member function. You can write n number of member functions and then curly bracket close and a semicolon. Now let us see through an example how to define a class. As I said, a student can be a class name. See, I have mentioned a keyword class, then the class name student, curly bracket open. Now this private, if you remember, it was access modifier. You can observe this also, public. What this private and public it is, we'll see in a program. So under this private, I have written integer roll number. So this roll number is a data member. Then float marks. Marks is also a data member of floating type, floating point type. Then you can observe here that I have written public, and there is member function 1. It is of void type and the name of function is input and there are no arguments. Then there is second function called as display, then curly bracket close and a semicolon. So this is the syntax to define a class. What it does is it defines the data type of name student, and then we'll see what is meant by object. An object is variable of its class. That means many times we create variables, for example integer x. So x is a variable which can hold the data of integer type. Similarly, we'll see what an object is. See how to create an object. The syntax is class name space object name and a semicolon. Now if you remember the example integer x, similarly now I can write student s1. Why we can do this? Because we have already defined what this student means. See, here we have defined the student means there will be two data members in the data type student. That means if I define s1 of a student type like I had defined x of integer type, this will be s1 variable will be created, and in that variable there will be two sections. One will be private and second will be public. In private section there is roll number and marks, and in public there is input function and display function. Now let us see this through a programming example. Now if you remember what we have learned in structure, Let us take a simple program. Now here you can observe all the necessary files I have included. iostream, conio.h, then we are using namespace standard, and observe here I have defined a structure of student type and it has two data members. First is a roll number and second is marks. Then in main I have created one variable s1 of student type, and then I have written the code to get entered the roll number of a student and marks of a student from the user, and again by these two lines I have displayed the same on screen. Now if I run this program, the output terminal will come and then it will ask me for a roll number. For example, I will write 5 and marks I will enter 78. That means I have taken the data from the user and I have displayed the same on the screen. Now to understand the concept of class, I will just replace this keyword struct by class, and then you will understand what the class exactly means. Now if I compile this program or if I build this program, it will show me an error. What this error is, probably it says that the data roll number and marks is not accessible by this main. Why it happened? It happened because when we write a keyword class, if you remember in syntax there are two access modifiers. Now let us see the same program with the concept of class and object. The same program I have written here with the keyword class. Now the first access modifier is private, and under private there are two variables, two data members. First is a roll number and second it is marks. Now if you have understood what this private means, this private means whatever it is written under this private heading is not accessible by anyone else outside the class. For example, the main function. The main function is outside the class, so it cannot access this data. Then how to access the data? It is done by the member functions. If you remember in syntax we have written member functions. So here input is the first member function which asks the user to enter first roll number and it asks them to enter marks. Then there is a display function which displays the roll number on screen as well as marks on screen. Then class close and a semicolon. Now we'll see in main. In main, I have created one object. If you remember the syntax to create object, it is class name. So student is my class name and s1 is the name of the variable. Then see how I have accessed the data. It is the object name dot function name. Now s1 dot input, what does it mean? It is a function call given by an object by using a dot operator. Now let us see where this input is. This input is inside the class and it is written under access modifier public. Now this public means the main function can call this input function. That means it can access this data even if it is inside the class. And let us see, this input function is a member of a class, and now what it does, it tries to access the roll number. Roll number of whose? It's the roll number of s1, and roll number of s1, it's a private data, but the input function is member of a class. That's why the access is granted to this input function, and it will take the roll number and marks and it will store it in s1. Similarly, I have used a second function called s1.display. That means a display function will be called and it will display the data kept in s1 on screen, that is the roll number and marks. Now if I run this program, you will observe it is asking me for a roll number and marks. If I enter marks, you will get the result on screen, that is roll number and marks. Now both programs appear to be same, but Try to understand the difference between two programs. When you have written it in structure, then any function can directly access the data. But here in case of class, the private data cannot be accessed by the members, those who are outside the class. For example, this main function, and it can be accessed only through the member functions, that is the input and display. And the access modifier private, it doesn't allows any outsider to access this data. But if it is a public, then anyone outside the class can access this data. Hope you have understood this concept. See you in the class.